if you hold dollars, everything around you gets more expensive over time. Your coffee gets more expensive. Your house gets more expensive. The clothes that you buy, when you go out for a night to a Yankee game or what, everything gets more expensive. When you hold Bitcoin over the long run, everything gets less expensive over time. Your purchasing power increases at a faster rate than the rate of inflation. And therefore, literally every single good around you gets less and less expensive. If I said to you, if the root cause of poverty around the world is the fact that there are billions of people who earn economic value every day, they leave it in cash, whatever their local currency is, and their government devalues that currency. And so they fall further and further behind. They can't get ahead. The wealth inequality gap widens and these people get punished. But there's a solution. They simply can save that economic value in a different currency. That currency can't be devalued. It can't be created out of thin air. It's not controlled by anyone. And it's going to protect their economic value and their purchasing power. All of a sudden, it's not very hard to see a world where maybe this one asset could actually lift people out of poverty, could actually have this global impact that would change the lives of billions of people. Now, there's a lot that has to happen between here and there, but I think that's part of the promise of Bitcoin and why so many people are excited about it is they say to themselves, wait a second, is this a root solution to a problem that has been around for centuries? You can go all the way back to ancient Rome or anywhere else, and people were devaluing these currencies. They were constantly trying to figure out how do we steal value silently from the people to enrich ourselves. Bitcoin is an asset that you can treat as a savings account. You simply continue to save in it, and you don't have to worry about what is it going to happen over the next week, month, year, etc. Now, one of the things that people look at that and they say, wait a second, but it's volatile on a day-to-day basis. Yes, but in the same way that one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin, if you go back and look, one of the best examples of this, in 2016, the median home in America cost 664 Bitcoin. Today, it costs 6 Bitcoin. So what ends up happening is in dollar terms, we actually saw about a 50% increase. It was like $250,000, $300,000. Now it's over 400,000. Right? I think whatever it is, about 40, 50% increase in dollar terms for the median home between 2016 and 2024. So 8 years, 50% increase in that home. How many people's wages went up 50% or more? Probably not as many. In Bitcoin terms, there was a 99% reduction in the price of the median home in America priced in Bitcoin. Bitcoin literally made housing more affordable. And so when you think of it in those terms, what it does is it requires you to break the mold of thinking in dollars and now think in terms of Bitcoin. And so if you hold dollars, everything around you gets more expensive over time. Your coffee gets more expensive. Your house gets more expensive. The clothes that you buy, when you go out for a night to a Yankee game or what, everything gets more expensive. When you hold Bitcoin over the long run, everything gets less expensive over time. Your purchasing power increases at a faster rate than the rate of inflation. And therefore, literally every single good around you gets less and less expensive. And so that is something that we haven't had before. And I think that's really what is driving so many people to say, wait a second, this Bitcoin thing, if it works, this thing could really, really be special. And so far, so good. But, let's wait another 50 years and then we'll decide, was it successful or not.
The housing comparison is crazy. The
99% reduction.
That is something I've never heard before. It makes sense. Obviously Bitcoin's price has gone up a lot.
Another way to think about this is in 2016, Bitcoin was a couple $100 to maybe $1,000. I think it started in the beginning of 2017, if I remember correctly, it's maybe like $1,000. So let's just use 1,000. You could have bought $6,000 worth of Bitcoin and held it for 8 years. Your $6,000 would now buy you the US median home 8 years later.
Yep.
And so you think about that. If you would take that same $6,000 and put it in cash, you might not be able to buy the door for the house in today's terms, right? Like, who knows? And so I think once people start to realize this idea of protecting the purchasing power and everything getting cheaper around you, it completely shifts your view of how to think about where am I putting my economic value. Stocks obviously do very well. There's things like gold and real estate, they do well as well. But something like Bitcoin and this idea of it being a asset that not only protects but grows your purchasing power over time is something we really haven't seen before. And I think that's where Bitcoiners have done a lot of work in terms of trying to educate people on why is this different.
So would you say a good approach or, for investors that want to get involved in Bitcoin, is it just dollar cost averaging like you would to a stock?
I really think of this as a checking account and a savings account. And, in the traditional system, you put dollars in your savings account, you try not to touch them. Then you have your checking account and you got an investment account. I think that a lot of people use that framework to understand I get paid, my W-2 salary, taxes get taken out, have my after-tax dollars. Where do I put my money? I need living expenses in my checking account. I have a savings account because I'd like to have an emergency savings fund and a little bit of extra cash. And then I've got an investment account that I like to go buy stocks or commodities or real estate or whatever. To me, what is going to happen and what is already happening is that people are going to realize I get paid my salary. They take the taxes out. I have after tax dollars. I'm going to put some money in cash into my checking account so I can pay my living expenses. I'm going to put money into my digital savings account, which is Bitcoin. It's going to do a fantastic job of protecting my purchasing power and increasing it over time. And then I also, I want intellectual stimulation. I want to make some investments as well. I don't expect people to put 100% of their savings and investing in Bitcoin. I actually think of it as it's just a savings account. Buy some, sit it in there, you're good. You still want dollars. We live in a dollar economy in the United States, right? You go buy your coffee. You're dumb if you're using Bitcoin to buy coffee in the middle of Manhattan because you're going to get taxed and you're losing out on the future appreciation of that dollar that Bitcoin. The dollar is going to lose value over time. So you should spend the thing that's going to lose value and you should save the thing that's going to gain value. And so then you look at the investment account. Well, people are going to go buy stocks. They want diversification. They want safety. Going back to the conversation about the Wall Street folks, they want risk. The average American doesn't want to go seek risk. The average American wants to know, hey, if I work hard, I spend less than I make, am I going to have enough money to be able to live the life I want to live? And you know what? If I can use my investment account to make a little bit of extra money, that'd be fantastic. But I don't have time to stay in tune with what's going on. CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, read 10Ks, go on Twitter and understand what's going on there. What's the latest, greatest investment strategy? What's the Fed going to do? Right? Well, oh my God, China liquidity is increasing. That must mean that there's going to be this knock-on effect to the U.S. Oh, the election's coming. What are the two They don't think like that. Most Americans just say to themselves, you know what? I want to take some of my money. I'm going to put in the S&P 500. Warren Buffett told me never bet against America. And I'm just going to let this thing compound. And so they're still going to do that. But if Bitcoin can serve as that savings account, that alone would be a pretty, I think, kind of epic innovation and advancement for a lot of people's personal finances.
That is such a good analogy, the savings and checkings. That's
Well, it also goes into the crypto world where people are like, is Bitcoin going to be the only asset? And what I say is, traditional finance industry, you have a checking and a savings account. If Bitcoin is a savings account, stable coins are your checking account. People want to spend fiat currency that is going to be worth less in the future. It's still a dollar. Yeah, it's in this digital form, but it's just a dollar. And so you still want to spend the dollar, you want to save the Bitcoin. And so this whole idea of like, spend your Bitcoin to me is insane. I never want to spend Bitcoin. Why would you ever want to spend your Bitcoin? Right? And so, yeah, sure. Maybe we get to a point at some point in the future where all fiat currencies have died. Everything's priced in Bitcoin. It's like hyper Bitcoinization. And then you spend your Bitcoin because there is no future appreciation of Bitcoin. It's just one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. That's not the world we live in today. Is that going to happen? I have no clue. All I know is today that the Bitcoin that you hold is going to be worth way more in the future. If you spend it, it's like an idiot tax, right? You are literally doing something that is stupid. Don't do it, especially in the United States where it's not only about future value, then you get taxed. And so it's just checking and savings. Your new digital savings account is this Bitcoin thing. Whatever percent of your net worth you would normally put in your savings account, well, put a little bit of it in Bitcoin. Have an investment account, have a checking account, right? Just use timeless investing principles, but rather than have your quote unquote savings sit in an asset, dollars, in a savings account that pays you 0.3% or whatever they're paying these days on a savings account at a bank, in a currency that is going to be devalued at 25% over 4 years, maybe you should try a different currency.